If you feel like you're drowning in a sea of to-dos, then this video right here is for you. I'm going to share a simple 4-step science-backed system you can use to take control of your to-do list in under 30 minutes. But first, what am I basing this system on? Well, I am a retired social media ghostwriter who's written over 600 Twitter threads in the past 2 years. I've been a productivity and performance coach for business owners for about 4 years. And I'm also the co-founder of a software startup called Cortex, but there's more to come on that later. Now, I'm not saying all that stuff to brag. I'm just saying that as I've taken on more responsibilities, I've had to find ways to make myself more productive. Over the past several years, I've read hundreds of books on productivity, and the system I'm about to go over is one of the things that's worked best for myself, as well as the clients that I've worked with. One of the reasons why it's worked so well is because it's deceptively simple. A mistake people often make when they start trying to be more productive is they try using this way overcomplicated system, and it just doesn't really work out for them. In fact, what usually winds up happening is not only are they actually less productive, but then they feel worse about themselves because they tried to do this magical system and they weren't able to make it work for them. So in this video, I'm not going to tell you about a bunch of books and apps and software and stuff like that you need, but what I am going to tell you about is a simple system that you can use right now with things that you already have that will help you go from drowning in a sea of to-dos to actually getting on top of things. The first step of the productivity system is brain dumping. All you need for this step is a pen and paper. So to get started, just write down all the to-dos you can think of. No matter how urgent or important they are, just go ahead and write them all down. And don't worry about making this pretty and clean and organized quite yet. Just take a big ol' steamy brain dump on the page. I don't know about that one. Maybe don't do that. This step alone will make you feel a lot better because your mind will be a lot clearer. This relates to a concept in psychology called the Zeigarnik effect. Basically, what the Zeigarnik effect says is our brain loves to keep reminding us of things that we haven't yet finished. And that's why you probably have times where you have so many things that you need to do on your mind, you can't actually focus enough on one thing to get anything done. Once you feel like you've gotten the to-dos out of your head, then you can start organizing things. So basically go to another page of your notebook and then start rewriting that list, but this time in categories. For example, if you're someone who has a job but also takes classes and has a few hobbies as well, the way you can set up your categories would be work, school, and personal. Let's call that list you just made your long list. And now we're going to make our short list. Go through each category you have and pick out, I would say, 2 or 3 priorities from each category. Then write all those that you picked on another piece of paper, and that creates what's called your short list, which has the highest priorities from each category. So you see, what we've done so far here is we've taken all the noise that was in our head with all the to-dos bouncing around in there, we put them on a page, we organized it, and then we clearly picked out the few biggest priorities. Pen and paper is a great place to start, but as you do this, you can start using a tool like Notion or Todoist or soon Cortex. Cortex is a note-taking app I'm building. It's a second brain for creators that helps you capture, curate, connect, and create information. It's not publicly available yet, but if you'd like to learn more about it and hear when it actually is available, check out the link in the description. Anyway, whichever way you choose to keep track of your lists, just make sure it's something simple that you'll actually use, and make sure it's easy for you to come back and update each day. Step number 2 of the system is to time block. You don't need some $69 fancy planner thing from Amazon. You can just use Google Calendar, which is free, simple, and honestly one of the top 5 best productivity apps you can use. If you aren't already using a calendar, I'll tell you exactly how to set it up, and I'll show an example of mine in just a moment. So let's say you go to Google Calendar and you want to start setting it up so it's completely blank, and then start putting in events for everything you have to do. So your job or your classes or any other regular commitments that you have on a daily or weekly basis. Try to notice some times where you're typically free. Then in those times where you're normally free, just schedule some time blocks dedicated to working on something. Start off simple with this. I would suggest making 1 to 2 blocks a day, and then making those blocks about 15 to 30 minutes long. You're probably thinking, wait, that doesn't sound like much. But we commonly underestimate the amount we can get done with even small blocks of focus. So start small, and then as you do this over and over throughout your days, you can increase the number of your blocks per day and increase the lengths as well. Another tip I have for your work blocks is to label them either deep work or light work. Now, at a very high level, deep work is stuff that takes a lot of attention, energy, and thinking. And then light work is stuff that you can really do at any point, even if you're tired. I recommend labeling the priorities on your short list either deep work or light work. And then when you get to a deep work block, you can work on the deep work priorities, or when you get to a light work block, obviously you can work on the light work priorities. Now let's take a quick look at my calendar so you can see how I'm implementing this myself. So here on my calendar, you can see I have a few company calls for Cortex, then I have a couple deep work blocks, a light work block, and a reading work block. Of course, everyone's schedule is different, so if you work a 9 to 5, or you go to class, or you have other stuff going on, you may not have this similar arrangement of open time that you can play with. But that's totally okay. Just outline your schedule, like I said earlier, and then you can find times that you're typically free, put in some work blocks, and you'll be good to go. By the way, the app I'm using here is Fantastical. It's just a better version of the default Mac calendar. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but I would recommend it just because it looks nicer and it works a bit better in my opinion. Step number 3 is to honor your work blocks. And by that I mean when you get to a scheduled work block, do your best to actually do some work. Look at your short list of priorities, pick something from it, and just get started on it. If you get that thing done during your work block, cool, you can pick something else from your list. But if not, you can just pick it back up again later when you have another block. Of course, if you have something urgent come up, you can switch your focus to that, but do your best to keep your work blocks actually focused on your short list. Now, while you're trying to work, you might struggle to focus. So here's a few things you can do. Put on noise-canceling headphones and listen to some instrumental music. My favorites lately have been the Interstellar soundtrack, the Social Network soundtrack, and the soundtrack from my favorite game, Bloodborne. And yes, video game soundtracks are actually great for productivity because a lot of them are written specifically to keep you more immersed in the action that's going on. And if you're wondering why I specifically said instrumental music, that's because lyrics can distract our brain and take us away from what we should be focusing on. If you're working on a computer, close all the apps and browser tabs you don't need, or at the very least, just open up a new browser window with only the tabs you're going to be using. Basically, you want to eliminate clutter in your virtual workspace. And that, of course, also goes to your physical workspace as well. If you have a bunch of stuff laying around, then you're probably going to get distracted and it's not going to be a good time. A tip that's been surprisingly helpful for me is setting a timer. Now, I recommend getting a physical timer if you can. You can just use a kitchen timer or something like that. You could use a digital timer on your phone, but the only problem is you have to actually use your phone to set it, so it's not completely ideal. Either way, it's really interesting because every time I set a timer when I start working on something, it's like something clicks in my brain and I'm just like, okay, it's game time now. Speaking of your phone, put it on silent and put it out of sight. Even better, put it in another room while you're working. And that's because our phones are one of our biggest distractions and they can distract us even if we aren't using them. An interesting study I read a while back showed that subjects who had a phone in their field of view performed worse on attention-based tasks, even if the phone wasn't theirs. And of course, don't forget the fundamentals. Poor sleep, exercise, nutrition, and hydration can all hurt your focus, decision-making, and mental clarity. So try not to neglect those. That's one of my main problems with the whole hustle culture bullshit. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of everything else. So take care of yourself. Remember, you're a human, not a robot. But anyway, that's a rant for a future video. Step number 4 of the system is to iterate and improve. By this, I just mean check in with yourself once a day or at least once a week. Grab your notebook again and ask yourself things like, how productive was I this week? What did I do well? What could I have done better? Did I stick to my system? And if not, why? And what can I do to make next week better? These check-ins take less than 5 minutes, and if you actually take the time to do them, you'll quickly improve your system and your productivity. Something else you can do as part of your weekly review is to keep a done list. And that's basically just writing down the big things you've gotten done each week. Surprisingly, this is one of the most helpful habits I've told people about, because a lot of the people I've talked to are objectively high performers. They get a lot done, they're very successful and so on, but they often feel like they're unproductive. And that's because their brain focuses on all the things that they could be doing, that they should be doing, but they don't ever think about the things they've actually gotten done. So if you can keep a done list of the to-dos that you get to cross off, then that will help you feel better about your productivity, and it'll also make you more confident for your upcoming to-dos. One of the biggest destroyers of productivity is a concept called cheap dopamine. This video right here explains what that is, why it may be hurting you, and what to do about it.